In Genesis 2, we get a picture of what life was like in the Garden of Eden. In verses 5 and 6, we learn that there were no cultivated plants prior to rain and people to cultivate them. Yeah, that makes sense. The earth was watered with a heavy mist. Thus, the earliest climate was a rainforest. And there is evidence that the earth once had a worldwide rainforest climate, even at the poles. In verse 7, it tells us that man is dirt, animated by God's breath of life. So when women call men dirtbags, it's true. And unfortunately, some men do not mature far beyond the physical basics. However, the first man came from dirt, not a chimp. It's an old idea, for an ancient Chinese pictograph for create combines smaller symbols for dust, breath, alive, walking, and talking. Animal life is physiologically similar to humans, for Genesis 2:19 and chapter 7 verses 13 through 15 indicate that they also have bodies of earth material animated by God's breath of life. We differ primarily in that animals were not God's image creatures. Humans have some extra responsibilities and spiritual potentials to develop. But anyone that's had dogs and cats knows that they have personality, they do some reasoning to hunt and play, and can certainly express love and loyalty toward each other and people. I've had pets that filled a void in my life that most people were too busy to help with. Scripture also is more than ink, a simple fluid, etched on flattened wood fiber, as it is inspired, which in 2 Timothy 3:16 is literally God-breathed. Elsewhere, it is said to be living and active. In verses 8 and 9, God planted a garden with many good edible fruit trees, plus 2 trees in the middle of the garden. One of them, the tree of life, was allowed and necessary for human consumption. Forbidden was the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. But God was not forbidding knowledge in general, nor was he forbidding human awareness of right and wrong, but specifically something about the knowledge of good and evil, or morality, was off limits to humans, and for God only. The knowledge of good and evil is not something inherently bad, for God, who is good and holy, claims in Genesis 3:22 that this is his business and territory. That is the issue. While moral realities are inherently a part of God's universe, it is his business to know and determine what the values and boundaries are. Well, you can already see it coming. Temptation is going to be aimed at getting people to think, phooey on God's boundaries, we're going to make our own decisions about what's right and wrong. And we've been doing it ever since, and making a mess of things. In verses 10 through 14, we're told that a river flowed out of Eden and became 4 rivers, because Eden is the source. You might want to compare this with Ezekiel 47 and Revelation 22. You see, this river feeds the tributaries rather than the natural direction of tributaries feeding the rivers. We're told that the gold of Havilah is good, but it was outside Eden. It wasn't needed in the garden anyway. Where would they spend it? There are no shops or taxes yet, no sporting events to bet on. The Bible does not portray gold, silver, and money as inherently evil, but identifies the love of money, greed, as the problem. In verses 15 through 17, God created Adam, then put him in this nice backyard called Eden. We don't know where he was created, so there's no basis for geographical arrogance. But Adam was given responsibility to cultivate and keep the garden. Now this was light work. This is gardening, and a lot of people still enjoy gardening. Well, we were not made to be inactive, bored, and without responsibility. But that's what we're now seeing in adult children, where young people have aged physically and are not handicapped, but are simply lazy, bored, always tired, and without any sense of responsibility, still living with mom and dad and expecting them to pay for everything. No wonder they're not happy with life. We were not made to just sit around and do nothing but complain. Well, there was law in Eden, but notice there was lots of freedom. Eat freely from all but one tree, that's almost total freedom. Essentially, God said, let me set the moral boundaries, otherwise everything else is okay. Just go play in the garden and have fun. There was only one restriction, and it was quite plain. Do not eat from the forbidden tree, or death is certain. Literally, dying you shall die. In verses 18 through 25, God will provide Adam with a suitable helper. In verse 18, the first thing not good was not the first item on a lengthy gripe list that Adam wrote up, but something God recognized. It is not good for man to be alone. Well, Adam was not emotionally lonely, but he was solo. No relationships or social connections, no friends or companionship. In verses 19 and 20, God had Adam examine and name animals to help him realize that something was missing. There was no ezer negao, or suitable counterpart for him. An ezer negao is one before or beside, a strong partner, even a rescuer. Genesis is unique among early origin stories in presenting a very noble, separate account for the origin of woman and what God designed and intended woman to be. In verses 21 through 24, God did the first anesthesia, took one of Adam's ribs and refashioned it into a woman, and this supplies reason number one for why he should be loyal to her. She is part of him, the divinely designed rib woman. Like a rib, under his arm and close to his heart, she was to be his closest partner and heart protector. She is called Isha, woman, because she was taken out of Ish, man. In verse 24, we get Moses' editorial comment, "This is why a man is to leave, sever the primary covenant loyalty with his parents, and cleave, establish a new primary covenant loyalty to his wife, and become a united one with her," the origin of marriage and family. In verse 25, we're told that they are naked and not ashamed. In Genesis 3:7, we will see that shame is not inherently tied to lack of clothing, but originates in the guilt resulting from rebellion against God. Well, Adam and Eve lacked something that the rest of us all have, a basic reminder about reality in the center of our abdomen, a belly button. When self-centered arrogance and a sense of total independence overtakes you, and you don't think you owe anything to anybody, your belly button is there as a basic reminder that you owe your very existence to somebody else that came before you. We've all heard the jokes.
God made men first to get the bugs out. Then he made the new and improved version, woman.
Wrong. God made men first because he did not want any advice.
Well, Dirt Man and Rib Woman were not intended to be enemies or competitors, bragging about being better than the other one. We were designed and intended to be complementary partners, working together for the good of each other and the creation. So what went wrong? Well, it's called sin, and that entered the picture in Genesis 3. That's next.